In this video, we will be covering the next dichotomy. It's the thinking and feeling preference. Now, when you look at these two images, what do you think of? What is the connection? Both may be pretty hardworking, I would say. What qualities would be someone who prefers the thinking preference, probably? Winston Churchill here on the left. He makes decisions based more on objective and logical analyses. He thinks in terms of money and who is the best asset using objective and somewhat impersonal criteria, but is focused on results. He is firm-minded. He is probably a bit skeptical as well. Then when you see the Dalai Lama on the right, what do you think of? Someone who likes to empower others, deeply cares for others, someone who is very compassionate. The Dalai Lama is a person that uses more of the feeling preference because he considers how others feel when making decisions. Those with more of a feeling preference would be more person-centered and make decisions based on human-centered values and the feelings of others. The feeling type really value warmth in relationships. They let the feelings of others weigh in when they make decisions. Whereas those that use the thinking preference more tend to make decisions based on objective criteria and tangible results. Again, you may use both thinking and feeling to some extent, but remember, it is what you use more, what you do more, what is more natural to you, and what you initially would and naturally would do. Thinking type of people would tend to use objective logic to come to conclusions. They are logical and often less personal and objective in their assessments. They often find conflict as a natural part of communication and are somewhat skeptical. They can be critical and firm-minded, whereas the feeling people use more of a person-centered approach and uses human values to make decisions. To them, conflict is not necessary in communication and can cause unsettled feelings. Conflict is often avoided by those who are high in the feeling preference. Feeling type of people are often appreciative and trusting. They tend to be more open-minded to input and the opinion of others. When speaking to someone who is of the thinking preference, you may start to think that they are testing your knowledge, and if you're of the feeling type, it may get uncomfortable to you. This is because feeling types may seek harmony in conversation, often consider and respect the feelings and opinions of other people more. Thinking types will often check the rationale of the subject discussed. And the feeling types are those that take into account the needs of others more. Possibly, not always. Ultimately, thinkers make decisions based more on logic, numbers and data, things like that, instead of people-centered concerns. Okay, let's pretend you are a CEO of a business, and you have to come to the realization that you need to downsize your workplace by a whopping 50%, or else your business is going to fail. You cannot keep all of your employees on. How do you go about making the decision of who to let go and who to keep on? Write down what would help you to make your decision on who to fire or who to keep on. Would you keep on your best performers, or would you keep on those who really need the job? For this exercise, think about what would help you to make this tough decision. What factors would play a role on who you would choose to keep or fire? And write them down. Would you think of who produces the most money for the company, or would you consider who would it be more devastating to if they lost their job? Of course, many of us would think of both in this scenario, both sides, keeping the business alive, but also keeping the people alive. But what would you focus more on? Just take a few moments to write this down. There is a spot on the worksheet titled Exploring Personality Type Worksheet again to write this down. Or you can just write these things down on a piece of paper in front of you. But think about and try to come up with at least 4 things you would consider the most when you have to make this decision, and who to keep on and who to keep employed with your company. Okay, so if you use the thinking preference, you probably wrote down something like, who are my best performers? Or who excels in their job? Or who brings in the most money? Or the greatest revenue? Or who is most qualified? Or who is the most logical choice that has the skills to perform the job? Or if you're more of the feeling type, you might have likely answers that focus on the person and their needs. You would most likely ask yourself, who works really hard? Who deserves to stay? Who would be most affected by losing their job? Or who really deserves or needs this job? This is the feeling preference that will impact your decisions. With the Exploring Personality Type worksheet, thinking and feeling preferences, and determine what may be most like you. Do you think you're more of a feeling preference or a thinking preference? And then decide, and then you can compare your results to the MBTI personality assessment. So what would be some of the occupations for more of the thinking type and more of the feeling type? Since thinkers tend to use objective analysis more and sometimes impersonal criteria, the feeling type tend to take into consideration how people feel about others and others' concerns, and they would not be satisfied in occupations that go against these preferences typically. The thinking type would be more likely satisfied in managerial roles, getting work done, improving productivity, increasing sales, focusing on numbers, and the return on investment. They may not be effective in executing cutbacks, something that may be more difficult for a feeling type of person to do. They may find satisfaction working as a director or managing teams and not getting too caught up on how people feel about certain issues. However, the feeling type of people would value occupations and probably be more successful at occupations where they would work directly with others and focused on the concerns of others. This includes being a counselor or a social worker as an example. These are jobs that you will be directly helping people, and you may have a knack for helping people to resolve problems because it's a natural preference. Because you would have a genuine concern for them and understand how they feel about certain issues and help them to improve their lives. It might be more satisfying. Additionally, being a doctor or a physical therapist, anything really, in the medical sciences where you are working directly with patients would be an occupation that pulls from this preference as well, of the feeling type. Okay, in the next video, we'll talk about the judging and perceiving type. See you in the next video.